In the video game titled Super Paper Mario, released for the Nintendo Wii in April 2007, Mario goes to hell. It is a softer hell, taking more from the ancient Greek underworld than Christian fire and brimstone, but it is a hell nonetheless. And this isn't meant to be edgy or shocking, really. It is meant primarily to be, well, funny. This place is called the Underwear, and dying is euphemized as a game over, but also, more faintly but not insignificantly, it is meant to be contemplative. Because Super Paper Mario is a story where reflection on mortality flows naturally from the plot and themes. Paper Mario, as a broader franchise, has had an undeniably strange history, its core identity altering dramatically in ways nobody expected and fewer wanted. Its fanbase notoriously tends to castigate every entry from the last 19 years, and while opinion on the Wii installment has shifted more from the first bad one to the last good one over time, it remains representative to many of a transgression after which something special was lost. In short, it chose to simplify the RPG elements that defined its direct predecessors in favor of an emphasis on two-dimensional side-scrolling. The resulting fusion is neither as satisfying to move through as any mainline Mario platformer, nor as mechanically rewarding as the Thousand Year Door. It almost sounds like I'm calling it a bad game, but that's not what I think, and it's certainly not how I feel. The in-betweenness of Super Paper Mario is on the flop side not an accident or a blunder, but a feature that carves the space for a genuinely unique experience. The game is aware of its Mario pedigree, paper and otherwise, and chooses to both respect it and at times defy it. While the writing is always most focused on maintaining its trademark moderately irreverent humor, it does not lack depth either, being conspicuously a Mario game that has unusual things to say about fate and coercion and legacy and sacrifice. Or, to put it in the words the game chooses for itself, it is a tale of love. Welcome to Reconstructed. Full spoilers ahead. The game begins, if you can believe it, with Princess Peach being kidnapped. Jumping to conclusions, Mario and Luigi rush to Bowser's castle where they do not find her. After some confusion, the true culprit emerges from an interdimensional rift, the dapper Count Bleck. Black has the top hat, monocle, and third-person speech patterns of someone trying to seem like a villain. He speaks idiosyncratically about fulfilling some dark prophecy and, without much ado, immobilizes Mario and kidnaps everyone else. Before long, Mario awakens to a rainbow-colored geometric butterfly calling his name. This is Tippy. She speaks refinedly but distantly. Alluding to an unspecified matter of great importance, she quickly warps Mario to the top of an alabaster tower above which a yawning purple cavity hangs in the angular sky. So some things are bizarre in this setup, and some familiar. We have landed in the city of Flipside, a place between dimensions. Mario is here very far from the Mushroom Kingdom and only destined to go farther yet, but as we'll see, despite the setting looking and sounding unlike anywhere else in the Mario series, it still rhymes with the classic adventures of the past, as if there are underlying patterns that emerge inevitably no matter one's distance from home. Flipside is itself an established model, the hub world complete with inn, shop, and cafe. Its population of square-ish citizens convey a range of personalities and the implication of a breathing city. Wow, that's a high-quality texture. But there are aesthetic and tonal uniquenesses to Flipside as well, like the distinct verticality and affinity for mysterious pillars. Many of the NPCs express light concern about that hole in the sky. Mario's motivation for the story is obviously and simply to rescue his friends. That's what Mario does. However, Tippy and her associate Merlin, cloaked and knowledgeable, layer a new pressure onto the protagonist. In defeating Count Bleck, Mario will not only save the princess but fulfill some ancient prophecy and save all worlds from destruction. It is not just Peach's freedom at stake here, but apparently also the continued existence of the universe. And said prophecy is far from vague, delineating Mario as the hero from mustache to red hat and overalls. Flipside is not waiting for just anyone to take on this quest, they need this one particular little man.
Me?
In fact, the player can say no to Merlin's request, and if you do, they just give the fuck up and the game ends. As far as I'm concerned, this is an actual ending to the game. I've been Skyhoppers, and I'll see ya in the next one. But, you know, Mario says yes, and his task is laid out for him step by step. To triumph over the Count, he will need the power of the 8 pure hearts, the first of which is given to him immediately. Placing each pure heart in a specific pillar in Flipside opens a door on top of the tower leading to the dimension that contains the next one. As Mario jumps from world to world, that hole in the sky grows increasingly larger. The Void, as it is named, is a creation of Count Bleck and remains almost constantly visible. If Mario takes too long or strays from the prophecy, it will swallow everything and everyone whole. In this game, death lingers above. So off you go. The first level is called 1-1, contains this precise arrangement of blocks, and features a power-up transforming Mario into a giant 8-bit version of himself. The baseline gameplay experience here is most loyal to the concept of Mario from the NES. Now, it does trend toward more puzzle-like challenges than old-school platformers, with Mario often encountering dead ends and going through various doors unlocked by keys and switches, somewhat like if every stage in Super Mario Bros. 3 was a castle level. RPG elements are gradually reintroduced, but many, such as turn-based combat, equipable badges, and meaningful character customization, are certainly absent. The surviving mechanics are smoothened, the inventory annoyingly limited, status effects few and far between, and most memorably the partner system replacing charming character designs based on classic enemies with some shapes. More on them later though. However, Super Paper Mario doesn't waste much time introducing its most innovative feature of play. Mario can, briefly, flip to the third dimension. This quickly becomes your most powerful puzzle-solving and secret-finding tool, the ability to reveal the world as less flat than it first appears. There is a strict time limit on flipping, as if you were underwater, and not every room has something worth discovering, but in a world that is only known X and Y, Z will always be crucially valuable. Also, and this is important, Mario is taught this ability in some guy's house. This is actually the most meaningful difference between the levels of Super Paper Mario and those of most 2D platformers. People live in them. More often than not, the solution is not only stomping Goombas and leaping gaps, but fixing people's problems. In 1-2, there is a whole town, entrance to which is blocked off until you find the Bridge Master trapped in 3D and comfort him. Only then will he draw the bridge. Draw a bridge. Do you get it? It's funny. Despite the scaffolding of a genre typically containing only the barest of storylines, this game never waits long to remind the player that it is a narrative, and a narrative with particular themes. Prophecy and fate are returned to constantly in the opening worlds. Progress is often gated until Mario can prove he is the hero of legend, and mini-boss encounters occur because the hero must be subdued for the Count's prophecy to succeed. At the end of World 1, Mario finds a massive robotic dragon. This dragon is the designated protector of the desert's pure heart, but quickly recognizes Mario to be uniquely worthy of passing through. Only when the charismatic magician Dimentio, one of Bleck's high-ranking subordinates, shows up and interferes does it go haywire and attack. It even yells, "I am error," which is of course a reference to one of the best small video essay channels on YouTube. Subscribe to I Am Error, she's very talented, and that is a command. The ensuing boss fight is cinematic but easy and ends on a sad note. The dragon, who did nothing wrong, only trying to fulfill its ancient purpose, explodes and dies. This encounter then establishes another theme that will recur, that of coercion and control. Only after Dimentio's forcible reprogramming was the dragon dangerous. The negative power of coercion is in fact why Bleck kidnapped Peach and Bowser in the first place, to force them into marriage. Bowser is obviously all for it, but Peach has to be violently brainwashed into saying the words "I do." By some inscrutable mechanism, this act creates the Chaos Heart. This is the object from which Bleck derives his power, the object Mario will need the Pure Hearts to counteract in order to stop the void from growing. Luigi was also present at this wedding, but doesn't seem to have successfully done anything. As Mario receives the second Pure Heart from a long-winded ghost, Peach wakes up in Bleck's castle and begins working on an escape. Here, coercion again takes center stage, with Bowser's minions one by one being hypnotized into assimilation by Bleck's officious secretary, Nastasia. After Peach mysteriously gets away, something novel happens. In between each of the game's chapters, a story is told with only dialogue and soft music of two very different people falling in love and then losing each other. Although it seems a non sequitur for quite a while, this is the most important writing in the game. Back in Flipside, Mario is preparing to head to the next world when Peach falls from the sky. After reviving her, she joins the party, and her unique floating ability ends up being essential to reaching the next heart pillar. For the rest of the game, Peach remains a playable character, aside from a couple specific levels. She never gets kidnapped again, she's simply part of the team. Genuinely, that is pretty damn cool, and while Super Mario RPG did do it first, is still a striking deviation from the Mario formula, proving that in Super Paper Mario there is room for predetermined character roles to be subverted. Not much room, mind you, but this is still a step further than most Mario titles could even conceive of. The next two worlds feature, again, antagonists coercing others. First, the team goes to a mansion belonging to one of Merlin's friends, Merlee, only to find a suspicious teenage-ish girl named Mimi who is hated by the guard dogs and has obviously booby-trapped the house. Deeper into the mansion, you discover Mimi has established a sweatshop debtor's prison, trapping dozens of people with unpayable loans into endless hamster wheel labor. That's fucked up, girl. I'm not gonna say this is relatable, but you know. Thankfully, Mario wiggles his way out of endless wage slavery by stealing from the safe in the attic. Unsurprisingly, Mimi is revealed to be another Bleck underling who has trapped Merlee in the basement. However, she has the power to shapeshift into anyone else, and her true form is this. A terrifying chase sequence through the maze-like basement follows. Actually, pause. I distinctly remember being scared out of my mind by this part as a kid, but when I played it for the video, Mimi never once caught up to me, even though I wasn't very quick at figuring out where to go. Was that an emulation glitch, or was it always extremely forgiving? Please tell me your experience in the comments, because I really don't know. Anyway, when you eventually find Merlee, you also find a doppelganger. One of them must be Mimi, and to figure out which, you, of course, hold a flashy game show. And you don't win this show by noticing signs of deception, but by noticing the real Merlee is surrounded by flies because she was hiding in the toilet. This chapter's kinda all over the place, don't ask me too many questions about it. In World 3, Tippy is almost immediately captured by a huge chameleon named Francis. Francis doesn't have any connection to Bleck, but he is an incel. Obsessed with nerdy games and TV shows, he sees Tippy as a potentially valuable collectible and takes her back to his castle. While her absence only mechanically deprives the player of some flavor text, it still feels like a big deal because, more than anyone else, Tippy is the voice of Super Paper Mario. With Mario himself silent as usual, Tippy provides the reaction to and explanation of what's happening. Peach and other future party members have moments where they express their unique personalities, but especially while filed as playable, those opportunities are rare. In this chapter though, Tippy begins to develop, and it becomes clear that in her we have a character with an arc. On the way to rescue her, Mario and Peach find, stomp, and recruit Bowser by convincing him he can't let Bleck upstage him. As a playable character, Bowser is painfully slow and large, but does double the damage, and his Fire Breath attack just invalidates a lot of enemies. The trio then forges through the Bitlands, pixelated levels dense with visual and sonic references, the player consistently rewarded for cycling through the party to solve minor puzzles. This occurs often enough to feel like cooperation is an intended theme, but in reality you will spend most of your time as Mario because only he can flip to 3D, which the game incentivizes doing as often as you can. Just before reaching Francis's lair, the team must directly battle Dimentio for the first time. Dimentio is self-aggrandizing, supercilious, and undeniably funny. The Jester brings Mario to a pocket dimension where his own attacks are 256 times more powerful, totally missing it'll make the heroes 256 times stronger too. Whoops. The player is also allowed to see that, unlike the other minions, Dimentio's loyalty to Bleck is false. He has his own schemes in motion too. Now that mistake feels less accidental than calculated. In level 3-4, the point of this Francis character slaps you right in the face. He is a heavy-handed skewering of otaku culture that begins to feel a bit mean-spirited, especially with how much of his tacky merch collection is characters from previous Paper Mario games. Like, is this how they see Paper Mario fans? If so, oof. Francis is defeated in part by his inability to talk to women, and Tippy is freed from captivity. Until this point, Tippy had been rather direct and impersonal. Her language verges on pompous, and it wasn't clear if she had any emotional stake in the plot. Here, though, she is genuinely surprised and touched that Mario and friends would come to her aid. This expression of sincerity causes the pure heart to appear from nowhere. Suddenly, these seeming MacGuffins take on symbolic possibility. If they are not just objects won by reaching another castle, but summoned by strong emotion, then these giant hearts probably say something about love. In examining why and how pure hearts are obtained, we can learn what Super Paper Mario is setting itself up to say. Chapter 3 is the most clear-cut so far. We see Tippy's gratitude and vulnerability as on some level synonymous with the creation of love. The level's antagonist, therefore, must have been doing love wrong. The point of Francis is not just to be mean to the nerds table, but to show that one thing love is not is ownership. Francis is the kind of fan whose appreciation is defined by collection and consumption. He may claim to love his favorite comics or his shiny new butterfly, but what he's really doing is putting them in a box, and that, the game suggests, is not love. As previously mentioned, the broad cruelty of the villains in Super Paper Mario is that they take control over others. In chapters 1 and 2, we saw Dimentio's corrupting spell on the dragon and Mimi's whole sweatshop deal respectively. The Chaos Heart, the force driving this apocalyptic end-all world scenario, was created by an arranged marriage. However, there is a tension here, because Mario and the player themselves have very little control over the actions they take. Count Bleck's whole plan is to follow what is known as the Dark Prognosticus, an ancient book that has long prophesied destruction. To counter the Dark Prognosticus' supposed inevitability is not to forge some spontaneous path of justice, but instead to closely follow the Light Prognosticus, an ancient book that has long prophesied hope. So no matter how you slice it, choices in this game, bad and good, have been predetermined by people from long ago. It cannot be wholly bad to force people into certain behaviors, because Mario being the hero and taking on that pressure was good. Even the surprising seeming spontaneity of Peach and Bowser joining the party is later revealed to have been destiny as well, the Light Prognosticus having 4 heroes instead of just 1. You don't fight against fate in this game, you fight for the kinder of only 2 futures. The first 3 pure hearts were delivered by members of the Ancients, like Merlin and Merli. These characters are descended from the tribe that created the hearts and wrote both Prognosticus books thousands of years in the past. They structured their lives around being ready for the hero whenever necessary. In these cases, the pure heart is not summoned by outward emotional triumph, but by fulfillment of a long-held purpose. To dedicate oneself to a duty that is larger than oneself is on some level synonymous with love, too. In a Mario game, returning to this arrangement of blocks limiting Mario to these skills and icons is maybe tired, but also a continuation of a legacy whose roots are deep and strong. These are the ideas and conflicts the remainder of the story is built upon. However, I said there were 4 heroes, right? Now, who must be left? Oh! In between chapters 2 and 3, the player controls Luigi as he wakes up in the Dark Castle. Immediately his mind goes to helping his friends, but instead ends up playing bodyguard for a couple of Goombas who quickly betray him. The problem here is apparent. Luigi is easily manipulated. He is captured by Anastasia mostly because he was outsmarted by famously simple and powerless enemies. Luigi calls out for his brother, and the scene fades. Unlike most stories, the main characters of video games are not necessarily expected to change. Mario is Mario at the start of the game, and he's Mario at the end, and he's Mario in the middle too. And you already know Mario. His potential for growth or meaning is severely limited by his blanketing existence as an unalterable brand. The same is true of Peach and Bowser, if to a lesser extent. While Mario spin-off titles have worked admirably to give both entertaining personalities, they must remain within the boundaries of the flagship Mario games, the ones whose plot structure has changed little since 1985. You can make Peach headstrong and ambitious, but you can't really give her flaws. You can give Bowser a temporary change of heart, but you can't give him contrition, because then it'll be weird when he does the same old nasty thing in the next game. I don't want to downplay the freshness of having those two be playable alongside Mario. That is a cool choice, but I'm also not going to pretend this isn't a stringent limitation on Super Paper Mario's narrative potential, that 3 of its 4 controllable characters are effectively unchangeable. However, Luigi... Now there's a guy with some issues. As a character, Luigi is inextricably linked to his lesserness. To distinguish him from his brother, he is always less confident, less peppy, less self-assured. Because of his insecurities, he will always be less useful than Mario, even though he can actually jump higher. Luigi is also good. He never harbors ill intent and always proves himself capable after someone coaxes him out of cowering in the corner. But unlike Mario, Peach, or Bowser, he does cower. Therefore, he is human, and therefore exploitable. Super Paper Mario understands the mind of Luigi and decides to invent him a new persona. First things first though, Mario asphyxiates in the vacuum of space. He's fine though, don't worry, he just forgot to steal a child's plastic fishbowl and put it on his head. Now he can breathe. That's definitely how air works. This game's fucking funny sometimes. Chapter 4 takes place in outer space. Most of the time in these levels is spent following the eminently annoying and distractible little alien named Squirps. Squirps supposedly knows where the pure heart is, but lacks much of a sense of urgency or humility. Nearly all of 4-2 is spent finding him some toilet paper, and 4-3 a chocolate bar he refuses to move without. But where can you find chocolate in the unending frigid nothingness of space? At the mini-mart. Duh. There's not too much to say about the space levels. One has its own unique race of blob-like aliens that speak out of their belly buttons, but are still among the least memorable Mario characters ever created. The Blobules, as they're called, get this one line in the video just to keep their memory alive. Eventually though, the player arrives in the Woe Zone, a place with flexible gravity, plenty of rectangles, and these pig enemies that I love more than life itself. At its end, you find Count Bleck's newest captain, the mysterious Mr. L. This unnameable man is brash and arrogant, even though his voice is a little shaky. This is a man with something to prove. Just because you're in red doesn't mean you're strong, he says. He then loses easily and doesn't understand why before pivoting to claiming he was going easy. To state the obvious, Luigi has not consciously betrayed his friends. He was brainwashed and has little to no memory of his past life. It is fair, though, I think, to understand Mr. L as revealing inner truths. After dispatching and inexplicably not recognizing Luigi, the team is finally led to the fifth pure heart. A golden statue of Scorps's long-deceased mother stands tall. 1,500 years ago, she was entrusted by the ancients with protecting a pure heart. Part of her plan was to put her own son into indefinite hibernation until the heroes arrived. Scorps is proud to at last complete his task, but wow, what a burden to place on his shoulders. Does he have shoulders? You get it. The pure heart has been delivered, but Scorps now exists in a world where his family and his entire kingdom have died. So again, fulfillment of purpose is a kind of love, even or especially when it comes at great cost. In order to locate the next heart pillar, the player must discover something important about Flipside. There's another one. Welcome to Flopside. This is a separate town with separate people that exists as a mirror image to Flipside. It has the same set of buildings, and in 3D the camera faces left instead of right, which is honestly a bit disorienting, but in many ways the reflection is imperfect. Things are darker and bluer here. Its music is pitched down, its people tend to frown, and its walls are crumbling. However, it is not simply a worse Flipside. The inn and restaurant are higher quality, and many of the NPCs talk about their very successful lives. Yet overall, it does appear Flopside has gotten the short end of the stick. The only ones in each town who even know about the other are Merlin and his flop-flipped alter ego Nolrem. The secret is kept so that only the hero can reach every heart pillar, but regardless of reason, the result is a segregated city. And in real life, when you see one neighborhood is clean and well kept and another is falling apart, you should take note, because that sort of thing results from political choices, from someone at some time deciding which people to prioritize. For example, in Portland, where I live, the city only picks up fallen leaves in certain neighborhoods, which tangibly affects the cleanliness of the streets for months. I'm gonna let you guess which tax brackets are more likely to receive this service. When two places that should be identical aren't, the source of that disparity should be identified and addressed. Super Paper Mario doesn't seem to have considered this. Unless I missed something, there is no explanation given for why Flopside is dingier than Flipside, no insight into their political workings, and no real re-examination of whether they should be separate at all. Two minor NPCs do appear to have swapped places at the end of the game to both of their benefit, so why not take that a step further? My point here is not to shame a game titled Super Paper Mario for not solving social inequity, but to show that in this story, sometimes the difference between two things is just the way it is. Flopside versus Flipside is a compelling setup, but not one that was ever intended to resolve. Now, what about the bluer, dingier, mirrored version of Mario? What about Luigi? Skipping ahead a bit here, the next time we see Mr. L, Dimentio convinces him to launch a secret attack on Mario against the Count's wishes. During the rematch, Luigi's robot buddy has been upgraded with hands and boots, but still falls easily. Frustrated and baffled by how he could lose when he's clearly so much cooler, Mr. L runs off. What we can extrapolate from these interactions is that Luigi struggles with feelings of insecurity and jealousy. He wants to compete with Mario, be seen as on the same level as his brother, but fails. After all these years, he is still player 2. While inferable from this game alone, this reading is no doubt informed by Luigi's depiction in the prior two Paper Mario installments, with the Nintendo 64 one spelling out his insecurities explicitly in a secret diary, and the GameCube title portraying him as a serial exaggerator desperate to be seen as the hero. Ultimately, Luigi does not understand why he's the less successful one. He doesn't know what he needs to change in order to get the respect he craves. Not long after his defeat, Mr. L encounters Dimentio again, who quickly murders him. Rest in peace, Luigi. The game is pretty frugal with the die word, but that is what happened here, no? He isn't seen again until Mario finds him deep in the afterlife. There he is, of course, cowering. Upon seeing Mario, Luigi's mood and capability instantly brighten, and he joins the party, pretty nonchalantly getting over his own death, which the devil will soon decide didn't count anyway. While negative feelings may tint the fringes of their relationship, Luigi does love and trust his brother and vice versa. Both are stronger with the other one present, and player 2 remains playable for almost the rest of the game. His super jump ability comes in handy often, and in general he is more consistently useful in navigating the world than Peach and Bowser. The next major boss is very tall, designed specifically to prompt utilization of Luigi's unique traits. Luigi being mechanically convenient is the closest thing we get to a resolution of his character arc. By the player using and appreciating him, I suppose we are to assume that translates into a newfound confidence within him. But is that enough? Shouldn't they talk? None of Luigi's friends even realized Mr. L was him, so they don't exactly seem in tune with his inner world. Will simply having him join the team really relieve his evident mental struggles? Has any work been done to prevent Luigi from being exploited again? And if the void is stopped, will Flopside's walls stop crumbling? You, clever viewer, may have noticed some foreshadowing. We'll talk about that L later, but first we need to spend some time in the past. Chapter 5 takes place in the land of Crag, home to the Cragnons, who are as dumb as the rocks they are made of. The aesthetic hook of this area is a prehistoric land filled with prehistoric people. The Cragnons are endearing and entertaining, speaking in a distinctive slang-heavy dialect. And, okay, their design may inherit a couple too many features from old racist depictions of indigenous people. I'm far from an expert on this matter, and so I'm honestly unsure whether it rises to the level of a problem in this case, and I can't find anyone writing about it anywhere on the internet, but I gotta call it like I see it. Would love to hear the perspective of someone with a more trained eye for that sort of thing. Regardless, the joke of the Cragnons doesn't feel pointed or mean-spirited, to me at least. They are just cavemen, basically. They're the Flintstones without the animal abuse. I'm sorry, I'm so annoying. And these cavemen have a particular problem. They are all being kidnapped by plants. This dimension is also home to sentient plant people called Florosapiens, but the coexistence of the two groups is strained to say the least. The Florosapiens constantly raid the town and capture Cragnon citizens for unknown purposes. Mario agrees to help them out, and the challenges of the next couple levels reveal more about these people, like that they are obsessed with TV, even though the TVs are also made of rocks, or that they dump all their trash in one river. In general, they seem a bit lacking in self-awareness, sometimes wasting the player's time, like having them physically type out "please" several times to receive a hint. The biggest example is Flint Cragley, star of some Cragnon adventure show whom Mario encounters in the Floro Caverns, and who is clearly incompetent with his long-suffering crew actually doing all the work. Flint is quick to blame others and valorize himself, which is concerning given his status as an immensely influential celebrity. Deep underground, Mario discovers that the Cragnons have been enslaved to work in the mines of the Florosapiens. Each of them have been implanted with a Florosprout, which robs them of their agency. The controlled Cragnons will slowly attack Mario, but if the player defeats them, the overall score, which doubles as your experience points, will go down. Framing the score as a sort of morality meter carries some strange implications, but the point is that Mario's focus should always be on liberating these unfortunate people. The mini-boss of the chapter becomes himself mind-controlled in the same way. The player had already fought Ochunks several times before this. Another of Count Bleck's core followers, Ochunks speaks in a stereotypical Scottish accent, even though his name appears to be Irish, right? He wants to serve as the muscle of Bleck's mission due to a deep-seated loyalty, and so his repeated failures are emotionally difficult for him to process. After his defeat in 5-2, he allows Dimentio to implant him with a Florosprout, essentially giving up his humanity to be a better tool for the Count. Without thoughts to weigh him down, he is a bit faster and stronger, but the end result is the same. The Sprout falls off and Mario uses it to bypass some scanners and reach the boss. King Crocus IV comes from a vaunted legacy of Florosapien monarchs. However, in his current state, he is vapid and obsessed with superficial luxury. His only given reason for enslaving the Cragnons is free labor to excavate gemstones for his ostentatious palace. After Mario causes him to wilt, his followers explain that the reason for his unstable actions is that all their drinking water comes from one polluted river. Before the king went off the deep end, all they wanted was for the Cragnons to stop incidentally poisoning them with their careless dumping. Flint Cragley recognizes a popular story when he sees one and agrees to spread the word about the pollution. The conflict between two groups of people is solved by rejecting the self-obsession both have a tendency for and instead cooperating to understand one another better. This choice summons the pure heart. In the land of Crag, it is cooperation that fosters love. Chapter 5, again and obviously, drives home that forcing people to do things against their will is bad. There is a unique mechanical punishment for not valuing the Cragnons' freedom, and Ochunks' agency being taken by Dimentio did not in the end help with his emotional distress. So then, now feels like the best time to discuss what I see as Super Paper Mario's biggest contradiction. Just before this section of the game, Tippy falls ill. Merlin speculates that this is due to her originally being human and that her current form is perhaps unstable. Tippy exists currently as a Pixl, a form of life artificially created by the ancients. Before the events of the game, Merlin found her near death and could only save her life by transforming her, which worked but at the cost of giving her severe amnesia. She doesn't even remember her own name. Throughout the game, other Pixls are discovered and collected pretty frequently. Each of them have a unique function tied to the one button, use of which is always required to complete their home level and some subsequent challenges beyond it. A huge proportion of the puzzle solving in the game is simply utilizing the right pixel at the right time, and progression through the outskirts of the hub world, and thus access to the heart pillars, is gated by which particular pixels Mario has found. Thus, the ability of this story's heroes to change the world is determined less by their own personal development, and more by how many geometric little guys they can fit in their pockets. So the reveal that Tippy was once, and therefore still is human, raises a question. What about the rest of them? Most Pixls are found in some kind of containment and are often relieved or even jubilant to finally be free after thousands of years of being trapped. In their introductions, they express distinctive and larger-than-life personalities with unique backstories. Some, like the hammer one, Cudge, do imply they used to be human as well. However, once they are collected, the game treats all Pixls aside from Tippy as inanimate objects. Despite their ubiquity in the gameplay, the other Pixls have no sway over the plot, nor do they even speak another word. And there is no genie from Aladdin moment at the end of the game. They have just traded living in a treasure chest for Mario's overalls, their self-expression limited entirely to silently dancing at the end of each chapter. In a game that repeatedly states that using people as tools is awful, your tools, which are people, remain in servitude. This is a bit of a fucking strikeout, right? There is a complete disconnect between a major message of the storyline and what the player is doing with their hands. It makes me feel that the game is not in full control of its own ideas, not able to wrangle all it wants to talk about into something cohesive. And I do wonder if it is partially the fault of this arrangement of blocks. Now, there is some lore to discuss before moving on. In both the flipside and flopside versions of an underground beveragarium, there is a bartender that you can pay to hear miniature stories. They explain some of the game's more obscure mechanics and shine light on the less clear aspects of its world building. A lot of information critical to understanding characters like Merlin, Ochunks, and Nastasia are contained only within these snippets of text from an optional area. The final set of stories discuss the ancient and villainous Pixl Queen, who once led the Pixl Uprising. Her revolution ultimately failed, but scared the ancients enough for them to stop creating pixels forever, a choice which apparently led to their whole civilization's eventual downfall. This history does not lead to any narrative payoff. The Pixl Queen never shows up unless you count the subtle implication that the post-game super boss, which most players will never see, might be her. In general, these stories give the impression that a lot more was written for Super Paper Mario's world than there was ultimately space for interaction with in the final game. Plenty goes unexplained, like why Mimi's true form is mechanical or where Dimentio came from in the first place, for example. So while the glaring contradiction represented by the Pixls is not dealt with in the main plot, it is alluded to between the lines and in the basement. Much of the depth is left pretty thoroughly buried. This game leaves a lot unsaid, but that doesn't mean there's nothing left it does say. Using people as tools is unconscionable, but there are times when ceding control over one's life is right anyway. And there are times when control is lost inevitably. Let's talk about death. These days, I am inexplicably compelled by stories about impending doom. I do not expect that to change anytime soon. If I had to pick one reason I was drawn to returning to this game of all games, it would be the void, the growing, consuming hole that hangs always in the sky. Between every chapter, its expansion causes tremors in the place between dimensions. While the time limit it represents isn't literal, its constant visibility cleverly dampens the mood. It is never quite a carefree adventure when you are always reminded that something horrible is on the horizon. This is what it's like to be alive. Entering Chapter 6, the player is greeted with a traditional Japanese aesthetic, jaunty theme music, and the void taking up nearly half the screen. This is the Samur Kingdom, inhabited by the Samur guys. Of all the people entrusted with protecting pure hearts, the Samur King has prepared the very most. In order to prove themselves as valiant heroes, the party must complete 100 individual fights against 100 individual Samur guys, each one separated by a gate and loading screen. If this sounds tedious and time-consuming to you, yep. And hey, Samur King, maybe consuming time isn't the best idea given, the situation. 20 fights in, Count Bleck shows up just to declare this dimension's destruction imminent and argue with Tippy about whether or not life has any value, which seems to trigger some deep memories within her. After this, the Samur guys finally get the picture and, as the tremors turn to earthquakes, let Mario pass freely. Too little, too late, though. And the void swallows the kingdom whole. Tippy's power brings the team back to Flipside. The door to the dimension still exists, but going through it reveals a world blank. Or nearly blank, but certainly not alive. After walking for what feels like ages, you find the pure heart lying on the ground, turned to stone, dead. The Samur guys' adherence to tradition doomed them, and now the very Mario-ness of the game's structure has gone off the rails. In level 6-2, a whole world dies, and now there is no castle to conquer in 6-4, no 6-4 at all. While you inquire about how to revive the pure heart, Dimentio shows up, just in the middle of Merlin's house, and quickly murders everyone. Rest in peace, Mario, Peach, and Bowser. Wow, why is Dimentio powerful enough to kill anyone at any time? Shouldn't he be ruling the world already? This is how Mario finally arrives in the aforementioned hell. And really it's more of a purgatory, it's Hades basically. There is a three-headed dog and a group of 3 old ladies. There is a river Twigs, serviced by the ferryman Carold. Puns abound in the underwear. But it is an afterlife, a final resting place for those whose games are over. The plentiful, non-threatening shades casually discuss their Mario-like causes of death, missing a jump, poisoned mushroom, swallowed by big fish. It is a humorous place first, and yet, when you descend into the river, the music is replaced by haunting, distorted voices. Pale hands reach and grasp, and the colors grow darker. This is not a place that lacks misery. The ruler here is Queen Jadis, elegant but harsh, who is about to judge Mario for his sins when she is distracted by the desiccated pure heart, and then a phone call. She gives Mario the task of locating her missing daughter, Loveby. After doing so and picking up Luigi along the way, Mario is rewarded with the revitalized pure heart and the knowledge that their games aren't truly over, whatever that means. Transported back to the land of the living, Mario can proceed with the prophecy. Placing the Sammer Kingdom's heart in the pillar does create the next door, but it does not restore their dimension. That door, it turns out, leads right back to the underwear. There is a pure heart, the final one in fact, hidden in an adjacent region of the afterlife, the over there. Accompanying you on the long journey upward is Loveby. She is a frustrating character. Sullen and impertinent, Loveby's only clear motivation is that she wants to meet her prince and be anywhere else but here. Her knowledge is somewhat useful on the very tedious backtracking heavy climb, but only somewhat. At the top is a boss fight against the Underchomp, which is a strangely traditional RPG menu battle. The joke here is, I think, that one thing Super Paper Mario believes to be dead is turn-based combat. The over there is composed of blue skies, fluffy clouds, and forbidden fruit. It seems to be heaven, and a flatly Christian conception of heaven at that. Everywhere looks exactly the same, and the music becomes grating quickly, made a problem by how very long it takes to finish the over there's various fetch quests. First, you need a particular color of apple to awaken Peach, who is the only character to actually land here. This is funny-ish, but also doesn't really feel like anything is happening. Next, you have to find 3 colored orbs to summon the bridge to the main temple, for some reason. This is a waste of time. Heaven is far from conflict-free, however, under invasion by skeletal, ice-powered enemies that escaped from the depths of the underwear. Their leader has breached the temple and injured Loveby's father, Gramby, who is more or less the god of this world. The boss is taken down easily enough, but not before revealing the chapter's big twist. The last pure heart is Loveby, and that's news to her. To continue the prophecy and save all worlds, Loveby must now choose to revert to her original form. While possibly implied that the pure hearts have some level of sentience, Gramby does explicitly clarify that Loveby as a person will cease to exist. The child of a god who has just begun to live is forced to sacrifice her own life for the sake of everyone else. Excuse me, this is, I apologize, the story of Jesus Christ, right? The comparison is easy, but of course the resurrection is a vital part of the story, and if the player returns to the over there in the post-game, oh my god, she is risen!
You can make a religion out of this. No, don't.
While her magically returning to life later does soften the blow, within the main story this is a serious moment. Loveby's sacrifice, while tragic, is framed unambiguously as the right choice. While Gramby and Jadis may have handled her upbringing imperfectly by keeping her nature a secret, the end result is sad, but good and necessary. This would all hit harder, I admit, if Loveby had been a more developed character, but the point is clear. According to Super Paper Mario, love is sacrifice. No one has complete control over their own life. Even the luckiest among us will face the same inevitable truth. The proportion of freedom one can achieve is thus deeply valuable, but also arbitrary, control being taken from some sooner than others for no reason beyond random circumstance. This story is aware of all of that. Chapters 6 and 7 center death because in a story broadly about control, death is its ultimate removal. Super Paper Mario states quite firmly that to steal the control of others for one's own sake is what evil is. The opposite is not to prioritize maximum freedom nor to live forever, but to willingly give one's own control away to others. this can take many forms, from simply opening up emotionally to fulfilling a long-standing restrictive responsibility to, the game dares to say, giving up one's whole life. Prophecy and tradition may rob control, but they can be good insofar as they can create opportunities for that sort of love. To build a more loving world, what the individual should do is sacrifice. This message will be reinforced as we explore the game's final chapter. It's a bold and complicated sentiment. Is it enough, though? Can it really end the conversation, assuage the game's contradictions? Let's see. One thing we haven't discussed yet is the motivations of this game's main antagonist. In Count Bleck's several dramatic speeches, he seems driven only by a perceived destiny to fulfill the Dark Prognosticus. However, in their meetings, his subordinates convey a belief that once all worlds are destroyed, Bleck will use this blank canvas to construct a newer, better world free of all the conflict and heartache of the extant one. So they are accelerationists, essentially. It does seem that Ochunks and Mimi believe in this future sincerely and that their loyalty is legitimate. Nastasia is more guarded, but it turns out has an even deeper commitment to the Count, and only she knows the man he was before. And there was a before. In private conversation, she urges Bleck to stop the prophecy, insisting that another path is still possible. He rejects this idea outright, and in a way that reveals there is no utopia at the end of all this, there will just be the end. Whoever he used to be, he claims, is gone forever, and all that remains is to fulfill an apocalypse that has already become inexorable. Nastasia stays beside him anyway. But he's lying. Count Bleck is still a person and has sought destruction not due to a neutral destiny, but because this world hurt him terribly, and he still feels that hurt. The small stories told with dialogue and soft music in between each chapter feature two characters, Blumiere and Timpani. The latter is human and the former from the Tribe of Darkness. After a chance encounter, they fall in love, a love that turns out to be forbidden. Both are physically injured by the family of the other, but decide that their relationship is what is most important, that they are willing to forgo everything else for the sake of being with each other. Before they can run away, however, Timpani disappears at the hand of Blumiere's father. Believing her to be dead, Blumiere's despair causes him to read the Dark Prognosticus and become Count Bleck. In Blumiere's eyes, a world that made his love impossible is a world that deserves to perish. If Timpani no longer exists, then existence itself is worthless. The game does not keep it a close secret that Timpani and Tippy are one and the same. She was banished to a foreign dimension, had her memory erased and her body transformed, but she is alive. As she becomes able to connect with other people again, her memories, slowly but surely, do return. Blumiere was mistaken. Their love is, after all, still possible. This knowledge is the weapon carried by Mario and Tippy and the rest of the team as they enter the Void itself to confront Count Bleck once and for all. If his prophecy is based on a false premise, its inevitability must be untrue as well. A castle level to end all castle levels comprises most of Chapter 8. Here, the player's ability to keep up with fast-paced battles, navigate complex areas, and effectively switch between party members and Pixls is all put to the test. As any good final level does, Castle Bleck demands applying all the skills the player has accumulated across the game. Narratively, this is mirrored in the choices the characters make, applying Super Paper Mario's primary message. One by one, they sacrifice themselves. First, Bowser and Ochunks save the others from a collapsing room. Next, Peach subverts her typical role by staying behind to rescue Mimi. Finally, Luigi defeats Dimentio and, well, okay, the encounter with Dimentio is a bit different. He starts by offering to team up and confirms that he has been subtly helping the heroes the whole time. It was him that allowed Peach to escape the castle, and when he sent everyone to the underwear, it was because he knew that only Jades could restore the petrified pure heart. Dimentio's duplicity has long been obvious though, and there is no reason to trust he is telling the whole truth here, so the right call is to turn him down. If you do accept, The game ends. Luigi's ensuing rematch does buy Mario enough time to proceed, but Dimentio still ends up with the upper hand. While we, as adults, know this game cannot really kill off all its Nintendo mascots, these sacrifices are, in the moment, treated with real gravity. Deep within 8-4, Tippy, or rather Timpani, and Blumiere are face to face with memories intact, but his conviction in the prophecy does not appear to waver. The fight must begin. At first, Bleck is invincible, but the other heroes show up alive and their combined presence summons the Pure Hearts to nullify the Chaos Heart, leaving a fair fight. And Mario wins fair fights. In defeat, Blumiere praises the heroes. At some point his heart was swayed, but the only way to stop the void now is to end his life, a fate he willingly accepts. However, this moment is at last Dimentio's time to shine. Despite a heartfelt sacrifice from Nastasia, the Dark Magician seizes the Chaos Heart and reverts Luigi to his Mr. L persona using a Florosprout planted sometime before. Together they fuse into Super Dimentio, the true final boss of Super Paper Mario. His motivations are finally laid bare and simple. Dimentio will remake all worlds anew so that he can be their unquestionable king. He represents the logical endpoint of the story's conception of evil, to desire full control over everything and everyone. Luigi is caught up in this because the Dark Prognosticus foretold his being the Chaos Heart's most potent host, more susceptible to control than the other heroes. As predicted, he was entirely unable to resist. Dimentio needed manipulation to reach this point because of his inability to utilize the Pure Hearts, but with them used up in the previous battle, he is now free to unleash his full might and finish what Count Bleck started. Super Dimentio begins the fight untouchable as well, and as the player fruitlessly dodges projectiles and jumps between grinning platforms, more and more dimensions are torn apart by the rapidly expanding void. Because he is motivated solely by his own power, love is inaccessible and incomprehensible to Dimentio. Thus, he is always doomed to underestimate it. The Pure Hearts are not an exhaustible resource. Love can be generated again and again. All it takes is a few expressions of sincerity from the other supposed villains, and Super Dimentio is returned to the vulnerability that makes us all human. The point here is sappy, but something I can always get behind. That, in spite of it all, love is stronger. The player's inputs are over, but there is one last thing that must be done to stop the end of all worlds. Blumiere and Timpani, separated for so long and corrupted by forces beyond their control, reaffirm their unconditional, everlasting love. A familiar, soft music plays. This occurs at the site of the Chaos Heart's creation, a symbolic undoing of the wrong kind of love in favor of the right, uncoerced, yet sacrificial. Because this act will cause both of them to disappear. Their union saves everyone else across every dimension, causing the void to dissipate and even resurrecting the Sammer Kingdom, but at the cost of their own existence. The other characters speculate they may still be alive somewhere, but following the credits we see their silhouettes stand together and then disappear over the horizon. I view this as a soft affirmation from the game that these characters found happiness, but did in fact pass on. Love is sacrifice. The reason I said the history of Blumiere and Timpani is the most important writing in the game is that it acknowledges that the world we begin with, the world of rigid structure and tradition and 2D side-scrolling, is fundamentally flawed. All the conflict in the game can be traced back to that couple's love being forbidden. To place that sort of restriction on others was evil, even if it followed long-standing practices. Despite all the time spent glorifying the light Prognosticus, prophecy was ultimately unimportant to the game's final scenes. The four heroes were valuable, but the final push was actually provided by characters who spent most of the story doing the wrong thing. Despite Merlin's foreshadowing that Luigi would be the determining factor in which prediction succeeded, he spends the final playable moments under full control of a megalomaniac supervillain, and they still win. At the end of the day, fate was secondary. Luigi's exploitation in the final battle was actually a bit of a cruel twist, wasn't it? The character with the most potential for growth, aside from Timpani and Blumiere, is denied meaningful closure. What this choice does demonstrate, though, is that there is work left to be done. The problems upstream of the story's conflicts haven't all been fixed. In the post-game, characters like Merlin and Mimi state they are committing their energy toward making this world a better place, so we are left to assume that the left hangings of the game will be solved eventually. Flopside's infrastructure will be restored, the Pixls will be freed, and Luigi will go to therapy. It is a touch unsatisfying, but far from uncommon, for a story to pass off most of the solving onto an alluded-to future. For now, Super Paper Mario is mostly content to address the problem at hand, and to address it familiarly. As a video game, it, just as its protagonists mostly follow prophecy with some twists, plays traditionally Mario with some modest innovations. In order for it to tell its compelling story, it must first give much of itself away to that Mario framework that may hold it back, but also allows it to exist in the first place. Love is sacrifice. It is a shame, then, that this particular unique style of storytelling ended here. According to producer Kensuke Tanabe, polling from Club Nintendo revealed that less than 1% of Super Paper Mario's players noted the story as interesting. Less than 1%. That number unsettles me. The next Paper Mario installment, 2012 Sticker Star, dramatically de-emphasized the storyline and implemented a deeply controversial gameplay system that spawns heated discourse to this day. The chief director of the first three Paper Mario games, Ryota Kawade, still works for Intelligent Systems but hasn't directed a single game ever since. Super Paper Mario may have been his very last production as creative lead. I should take a step back though, because I'm not personally interested in blaming particular individuals for the disappointing direction of the series, nor glorifying certain others as solely responsible for its high points. To make that sort of point, I would need to play all the newer games first, and while I've heard some intriguing things about the Origami King in particular, that goes well beyond the intended scope of this video, so I leave that to others. But I will say that it is simply sad that we may never play a game directed by Kawade but unleashed from the Mario branding. Who knows, but I think it could have been something special. Creation of any kind is an exercise in sacrifice. Some fraction of the vision, usually quite substantial, must be given up in exchange for it existing at all. Whether it be one's own creative limitations or limitations imposed on the project by others, all art is rendered imperfect by something. But even severely imperfect art is worthwhile, its existence a benefit to the world, even if just to inspire a work that is able to sacrifice less. While one may strive to fly as close to the sun as possible, there is beauty in the inevitability of how one's wings will melt. No one can create without fault and no one can create forever, but those are in fact the reasons why you should wake up tomorrow and give some of yourself away. Thank you for watching. This was an episode of my series Reconstructed, which are a mix of love letter to and literary analysis of my favorite media. Special thanks to Cass R, Justin King, and the rest of my generous patrons whose names are on screen now. You can join them for as little as $1 a month. Any and all support means the world to me. Making these videos is a blessing, and it's hard for me to process how many people actually watch them. I have really big plans for this channel and believe strongly in its potential, even though my recent mental health struggles have made progress unbearably slow. I promise I am trying my best to publish videos more frequently. I just need to figure myself out, and as it turns out, that's a big task. If you enjoyed my work here, please remember to like and subscribe, naturally. Also, and this is the bigger deal, sharing this video with friends or on other platforms like Reddit or Tumblr or the ghost of Twitter is a genuinely huge help. Thank you again, and please be safe. I've been Skyhoppers, and I'll see ya in the next one.